I'm Lauren Wells, the founder and director of TCK Training. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to introduce you all to some positive childhood experiences that are really important for the well-being and thriving of TCKs. Positive childhood experiences have been studied and proven to counteract really challenging things that we deal with in life. It's almost like they're a buffer against the hard things. And we know TCKs experience a lot of hard things. In our research, we found that they have higher likelihoods than the general population to experience a developmental trauma. In fact, 72% of TCKs experience a developmental trauma in their upbringing. And so it's really important that we find ways to counteract these. And we love the hope-filled framework of positive childhood experiences. It has been proven that by having 6 to 7 of these positive childhood experiences, rates of mental illness lower by 72% for children who've experienced developmental traumas. That means that even if they have hard things that they've experienced, they still can have thriving adult lives. But it's really important that they have these positive childhood experiences to mitigate those risks, to be that buffer around them so that they can build resilience through the hard things instead of being taken down, being increased in their fragility through the hard things. So we're going to look at these 7 positive childhood experiences over the next few weeks and give some really great tips on how you can implement those in the lives of your TCKs. Welcome back to our little series on positive childhood experiences. These are the 7 things that kids need in order to be buffered against the hard things in life. And our TCKs certainly need a lot of this buffering. The first one of our positive childhood experiences that we're going to talk about is that they feel heard in their home when they express difficult emotions. So when they talk about hard things, they feel like they are validated. They feel like that is allowed. Some of the ways that children express not feeling this is by saying that when they expressed difficult emotions, somebody always turned it into a joke. Or when they expressed difficult emotions, they were told why that was wrong, that they weren't allowed to feel that, or they weren't trusting enough if they felt that, or it's not okay to be angry, and so you're not allowed to feel that. So they were told that they can't, and so then they didn't share. They didn't share and they didn't feel heard. Some really practical ways to help our TCKs feel heard is to say things when they share their emotions like, that makes sense. I understand why you would feel that. If I thought that was happening, I would feel that also. Saying things like, can you tell me more about that? I would love for you to tell me more. I love to say to my daughters, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I love it when you bring me these things. Sometimes even saying, I can hold that. It's okay for you to tell me that. I can hold that. I love the idea of putting out a welcome mat that allows them to bring in their hard things. And you put out the welcome mat by saying, again, you can tell me these things. I can handle it. And I want to hear these things. I want to hear what's on your heart, even if it's not all happy things. I want to hear the hard things too. That will help them to feel heard. That will help them to feel supported. And that's a really important thing to provide them in order for them to have that first positive childhood experience. If you have any other great phrases or any other ways that you help your kids to feel heard, please put those in the chat. We can learn from each other. I'm sure you have some great ones that I've never thought of, and I would love to read those and hear some ways that you communicate to your TCKs. You can bring us your hard emotions. You will feel heard here. Welcome back to our short series on positive childhood experiences, those things that TCKs really need in order to thrive through the hard things that they experience in their developmental years. The second one of our series is the belief that your parents stand by you during difficult times. I was talking with an adult TCK and she said she did not feel she experienced this. And I said, can you tell me more? Can you explain that? She said, well, let's put it this way. If I was standing here and the people that my parents were there serving were standing here and it came down to it and they had to choose me or them, they would choose them. That's what we're talking about here. It is so important that your children feel like they are your first choice, that you care deeply for them, that you love them, that you are their parent who loves and cares for them over anyone else. It is so important that they feel that during difficult times, your family is a team, and your family as a team supports one another, that it's something that you all are invested in, and that you as parents communicate to your TCKs, to your children, we are a team. Our family is a team. We stick together. We do hard things together. We support each other. We are there for each other. That is so important for TCKs to know and to hear and to have reiterated constantly, especially when there is so much of your life that's focused outside, external from the family unit. That's something unique about the TCK life, is that unlike a typical monocultural life where the parents work and their work stays out there and then they come home and they have their family time, for TCKs, often work and family life are so intermixed that it's hard for them to know what is more important, where do we stand? And so it's really important to continually communicate to them, you are so important to us. You are more important than our work. You are our first priority, and our family is a team, and we stick together and we support one another. Come back to the next session and we'll talk about the third positive childhood experience. Welcome back to our series of short videos on positive childhood experiences. And these are the things that TCKs really need in order to thrive despite some of the challenges that they face and go through. The third one that we're going to look at is safety, feeling safe and protected in the home. This is really important. It is important that they perceive that they are safe, that they feel that they are safe, because a fear of safety is something that actually creates anxiety. It creates this fear response. It's almost like they're constantly living in that fight or flight state because they're concerned for their safety, even in their home. And the home should be a place where they can relax, where they can be at peace, where they don't need to be concerned. And so it's really important that you take seriously their fears for safety. So if you're hearing that your children are afraid, don't blow it off. Communicate to them what measures are in place to protect them. You can say things like, well, that's why we have bars on the window, because that keeps people from getting in. Or that's why we have a guard who stands outside and stays up all night long. Or that's why we have locks on our doors. That's why our windows have locks. Communicating to them the safety measures that are in place. Another thing that can be important to communicate, especially if you have a child who is expressing concern about this, is what is the plan? If this were to happen, what is the plan? Sometimes we think that by sharing that information, we're scaring them more. But if they're already thinking about it, if they're already communicating to you that they're scared that this thing would happen, make a plan. Don't just say, well, that's not going to happen. Say, if this did happen, here's what we would do. Here is the plan to evacuate. Here is what would happen. Here's the plan. I remember when we lived in Tanzania, we lived at the foot of a volcano, and we all knew that this volcano was active and it created these huge earthquakes all the time. And I remember talking with my parents about, what if this volcano erupts? What will we do? And they walked me through the evacuation plan that had been put out to the expats in that area and said, here's the evacuation plan. Here's what we would do. And that brought so much comfort, because I thought, okay, perfect. We've got a plan. This is something that I don't need to worry about anymore. I don't have to create the plan. As a 13-year-old, there's a plan. We'll follow that. Another way that children can feel not safe is if they feel like they don't have privacy in parts of their home. This is something that's come up multiple times when working with adult TCKs, that they say they didn't feel safe in their home because their family lived with an open door policy with the community around them, which meant that people were always allowed to come in and out of their home. Part of that is perfectly fine. But what I've heard from a lot of adult TCKs, and especially adult women TCKs, is that they would say things like, but that meant that in my room, because I didn't have a lock on the door or I wasn't allowed to lock my door, I was always scared to change my clothes because I never knew if somebody was going to walk in. And I had this one adult TCK say she got dressed every day with her back up against the door to make sure that nobody was going to come in. That is a fear of safety in many ways. And so it's really important to even consider from that perspective, are you giving your kids a safe space in the home where they feel like they can go without fear of being walked in on, of being harmed, anything like that. It's also really important that you ask your children, and I would encourage you to do this even tonight. Ask your children, do you feel safe in our home? You may assume that the answer is yes, but it's worth asking. It's important to ask and say, do you feel safe in our home? If not, why? Tell me why. Can you tell me why? And then communicate to them, if you ever don't, please tell me. You won't get in trouble. That's perfectly okay for you to tell me, because I want to make sure you feel safe in our home. That's really important to me and to us as your parents. We want to make sure that our home is a safe space. So if you ever feel like it's not, please let us know. And that just opens the door to that conversation that they might otherwise feel is not okay to share or would make you upset for them to share. So consider having that conversation tonight and come back for the next session. Welcome back to our series of short videos on positive childhood experiences. The one we're going to talk about today is being supported by friends. This is really important, and it can be really challenging for our TCKs because maybe we're moving a lot or our friends are moving a lot. And so it can be difficult to have this positive childhood experience consistently throughout our TCK's developmental years. I want you to think about each of your children and see if you can name at least one good friend that they have. The important thing about this positive childhood experience is that it is peers who are of the same developmental stage, so a similar age, and not siblings. Siblings are fantastic friends, but when they looked at this research, when they looked at the positive childhood experiences, they found that peers who are not siblings are really important because how you interact with them is different than you would interact with a sibling. And learning that interaction, learning the social expectations of those interactions is really important. And so I want you to think about, do each of your TCKs have a group or have a single friend or have a few friends who they would say, yes, I am close friends with these people? If they don't, it would be really important to consider how you would help them find those people. If you're in a remote location and you're in a situation where they only have their siblings as friends, it's really important that you help them find those peers. Maybe you have to drive a bit to get them to peers. Maybe you look for an online group. There are several groups out there, organizations out there that host online clubs, online groups for TCKs of all ages. That can be a fantastic way for them to have that positive childhood experience. It is important that you recognize the importance of them having friends. I often hear from parents that that's something that kind of gets dismissed. Well, this is just our life, that our kids aren't able to have good friends. But we know that that's something that's really, really important for all children to have, and especially our TCKs. who are at higher risk for a lot of developmental challenges, developmental traumas. And so we want to surround them with these positive childhood experiences. And one of those is being supported by peers, being supported by friends. So think about how you can make sure that each of your children have opportunity to have peers in their life if they don't already. And come back for our next positive childhood experience. Welcome back to our series of short videos on positive childhood experiences. Positive childhood experiences are those things that buffer TCKs from the challenges that they experience. They help those challenges to be resilience building instead of fragility increasing. And so these are super, super important. If you haven't watched the previous videos, you should go do that because there are 7 positive childhood experiences and we are on number 5. So our 5th positive childhood experience is belonging in a multi-generational group. This means that they feel like they have belonging, that they are part of a group, and that requires history. A lot of times belonging requires having shared experiences, having things that you've done together, having history together. Multi-generational groups can come in the form of schools. It can come in churches. It could come in organizations, groups that you're a part of. But it's really important that they have people who are older than them, who are younger than them, who are their peers, who are doing life in a group together of some sort. And so it's really important to consider whether your children feel that they have that, and if they don't, how they can get that. This can be challenging if you are in a situation where perhaps you're homeschooling, or perhaps you're in a really rural area. How can they be a part of a multi-generational group? We might have to think really creatively about this. Maybe you talk to your sending church back in your passport country and ask them how they could help your kids to feel like they're more a part of the group there by sending things, by having video calls, that sort of thing. Maybe you could talk to surrounding neighbors and friends and see if they could be a part of that group. Sometimes the multi-generational group is the community that you're serving and you're spending time in that community. Maybe it's the company you're working for and you're spending time with the other families in that company. But creating that multi-generational group belonging is really, really important. Oftentimes that belonging, again, involves shared experiences. So thinking about how you'll get those shared experiences. This might mean choosing to go on vacation together or choosing to sign your children up for the event that's coming up. This could be that you let them go to the school events, even if you're homeschooling them. What is it that you could do that would help them create history and shared experiences within that group context? Because that's a key to feeling like you belong. It's also really important that you ask your children if they feel like they belong in that group. So sometimes I'll have parents communicate to me that yes, they absolutely have a multi-generational group. It's our team that we're a part of. And I'll say, okay, fantastic. And then I'll talk to the TCKs and they'll say, yeah, we do not feel like we belong in that group. So perhaps then it would be important for the parents to hear that and then talk to the TCK and say, what would help you feel like you belong? What's making you feel like you don't belong? Asking your TCKs, do you feel that there's a group of lots of different ages that you're a part of? And if not, what can we do so that you feel like you're more a part of that, or so that we can create that in your life? Come back to the next video. There will be 2 more in this series on positive childhood experiences. In this series of short videos, we've been talking about positive childhood experiences, those things that kids really need in order to be able to get through the hard things that life throws at them. And for our TCKs, often those hard things involve losses and friends moving away and changes in their life. There's lots of really significant challenges in the TCK life. And one way to combat those is with these positive childhood experiences. We're on number 6. If you haven't heard the previous 6, go back and watch those. You can find them on our Instagram or Facebook feed. But number 6 is routines and traditions. It is really important for children to have routines and traditions because it gives them something to look forward to. It creates what's called positive anticipation. And this is the idea that there's something good coming that I can look forward to and I can get excited about it. This is really important because as adults, we can often plant those things in front of us. We can schedule something to look forward to. We can think ahead of something that we know is coming in a few weeks, and that might get us through the really hard next few weeks. But for kids, they need us as their parents to put those things in front of them. We need to put those things on the calendar. We need to schedule those. We need to tell them we're going to have a really fun picnic on Saturday. And so they can get excited about that. So what are the routines and traditions that you have? These could be simple routines like Friday night pizza every Friday. That's something we do in our family. It could be pancakes on Saturday morning. It could be that you go to an event every Wednesday night at your company or at your church. It could be that you have a time with friends at the same day every week. Whatever it is, you want to have routines that create that positive anticipation. But then there are bigger traditions, and these could be for holidays, for things that you celebrate throughout the year that mark the seasons, that help them again to think of something exciting that's coming up. When you are living the TCK life, you're living the expatriate life, you have to make sure that you have what it requires to be able to make those traditions happen. So it's really important to think about routines and traditions that you can continue and keep up anywhere in the world, or that you might need to bring something with you to make it happen. Our COO, Elizabeth Smith, she and her family travel full time, and she brings a container of baking powder everywhere she goes so that they can always have their pancakes on Saturday mornings, because that is a routine and a tradition in their household. And they can get flour and eggs and whatever else they need anywhere that they are, but baking powder can be hard to come by. So she makes sure she travels with that. So what do you need to put into place to make sure that your routines and traditions can be continued wherever you are? But maybe what routines or traditions can you create? And again, we want them to be fun. We want them to be routines and traditions that are enjoyable and that usually include quality time with friends, with family, with just your immediate family. So think about those and how you might implement those for your children. Today is the last day going through our short videos on positive childhood experiences. If you've been following along, I hope that this little series has been really helpful for you, that it's given you some really practical ideas and ultimately some hope. We know that TCKs go through hard things, but we need to have a hope-filled framework for how we combat those hard things with positive things. And these positive childhood experiences are a really practical way to do that. That's not hard. It's just something you have to be intentional about and be creative about. So our final 7th positive childhood experience actually is kind of 2. They combined kind of 2 in 1 when they did this research. So the first is feeling a sense of belonging in high school. When they researched this, they found that the sense of belonging in high school was really important and indicative of what life after high school tended to look like. And so having a conversation with you and your spouse, you and your teenagers on having the sense of belonging in high school, do they feel that? Is that something that you need to think about changing something in order for them to feel that they have that in their high school and with their peers? If you're homeschooling, do they have a sense of belonging with a group of some sort, that they feel like they belong to that multi-generational group that we talked about in a previous video? Do they have peers who they feel they belong with? It takes time to belong, and I'm often asked whether or not I think it is a good idea for people to move overseas or move to a different country with teenagers in the high school years or right before the high school years. And I will never give a direct answer because it really depends. It depends on the situation. And yet, one thing that we need to always consider is what is going to give them the highest chance for a sense of belonging in high school. It is really difficult to feel like you belong if you are constantly the new person. So changing high schools every year for all 4 years of high school makes it really difficult to have that sense of belonging in high school. Changing high schools halfway through the year or changing to homeschooling halfway through your high school experience can make it really challenging to feel that sense of belonging. Belonging often requires history. It often requires having time together. It often requires having a sense of unity of experiences. And so it can be really important to think about this if you are thinking about transitions with high school age TCKs, or if you are friends with or coaching parents who are thinking about transitions with high school age TCKs. A sense of belonging in high school is so important that it is worth considering when you are making decisions and making decisions that would give the best opportunity for that. The second part of this 7th positive childhood experience is having 2 supportive non-parent adult relationships in the child's life throughout their life. Now, these don't have to be the same 2. They don't have to be the same 2 from birth to age 18, but throughout their life, they need to be able to continuously point to at least 2 adults who are not their parents, who are speaking into their life, who love them, who care about them. This could be their friends' parents. It could be grandparents. It could be coaches, teachers, but people who are in their life speaking into it. And that is so important. And it's also so important to recognize then what a value those people are in the lives of TCKs. So your friends who are loving on your children, the grandparents who call them regularly, remind those people how valuable they are. They're contributing to this positive childhood experience for your TCKs, and that is so important. If you think that one of your TCKs maybe doesn't have this and isn't getting this, consider how you might reach out to somebody and say, hey, would you take them under your wing? Would you be willing to invest in them? Would you mentor them? Would you just reach out and get together with them every once in a while? That is really, really important. So if they don't have that, think about how you as a parent might be able to facilitate that. Well, that is the end of our series for positive childhood experiences. Again, I hope that was valuable. I hope you have some great ideas. Please put your own ideas in the chat of each of these videos in the comments. I think that could be really useful for other parents to hear ideas that you have and ways that you have decided to make these things happen in your family. Again, as expatriates, often the ways that we create these positive childhood experiences have to be really creative, and we can learn creativity through each other. So if you have excellent traditions, if you have great ways of helping them find that sense of belonging in high school, drop those things in the comments. We want to hear them. I hope this has been helpful. We're going to do more of these videos on different topics as the weeks go by. So stay tuned, and I look forward to sharing more with you. Thank you for watching our mini video series on positive childhood experiences. I hope that it was helpful to you. If you'd like to learn more information about positive childhood experiences and just how to care for TCKs well, visit our website, tcktraining.com. On there, you can find our catalog, which has all of the workshops and trainings that we offer throughout the year. You can also schedule a private coaching session with our TCK training coaches, and that's a great way for you to gauge how your family is doing specifically with positive childhood experiences, and for you to ask really specific questions that are unique to your family. So get in touch with us. We would love to hear from you and learn how we can support you better, whether you are a parent loving and caring for your TCKs, or a caregiver supporting parents, or a teacher supporting TCKs in the classroom. We would love to be a part of the work that you're doing.